Hook, in the quiet corridors of royal history, where bloodlines are documented with meticulous care and every public appearance is dissected for meaning, a simple photograph can sometimes speak louder than any proclamation. When a candid image of young Archie Harrison emerged, it wasn't his smile or his setting that sent a ripple through online communities and royal watchers alike. It was a cascade of coppery red hair, gleaming unmistakably in the light. This was no mere toddler's feature. It was a living, breathing fragment of lineage, a vivid thread connecting a California-born boy to a centuries-old dynasty and, most poignantly, to his father. In that flash of color, genetics wove a story deeper than titles, a silent testament to heritage that no distance could diminish. The sun over Montecito held a particular quality, a gentle golden haze that seemed to bless the rolling hills and tranquil gardens of the Sussex's home. It was here, in this haven of carefully nurtured normalcy, that a moment of unguarded play was captured. The photograph, shared not through any official palace channel, but perhaps via a trusted friend or glimpsed in the background of a casual update, was disarmingly simple. Archie Harrison, no longer the infant the world last saw at a formal portrait, but a sturdy, growing boy, was caught mid-laughter. He was looking at something off-camera, his face alight with a joy that was purely his own. The setting was unremarkable, a patch of grass, the dappled shade of a tree. But the light, that beautiful California light, fell directly upon his head, illuminating his hair not as a plain brown or a generic blonde, but as a distinct, burnished auburn red. The image, once it found its way into the digital ether, did not take long to ignite conversations. Royal fan forums, social media platforms, and gossip columns that tracked the House of Windsor with astronomical precision lit up with analysis. Enthusiasts zoomed in, adjusting contrast and brightness, debating the exact hue. "That's ginger pride right there," one commenter exclaimed. "Prince Harry's twin," declared another. The conversation quickly moved beyond mere observation into the realm of symbolism. For years, the distinctive red hair of the Windsors, most famously carried by Prince Harry, had been a topic of public fascination, often tinged with crude jokes and media taunts that Harry himself had spoken of enduring. It was a trait that marked him visually apart from his brother, a vivid signature of his Spencer ancestry from his mother's line, Princess Diana's father, and siblings having shared the same coloring. Now, seeing it blossom on his son, far from the pressures of London palace life, felt profoundly significant. It was a quiet, biological rebuttal to the physical and emotional distance that had grown between the Sussexes and the rest of the royal family. Here was proof of connection that no ocean could erase. Commentators and fans began to piece together the genetic puzzle, pulling up old photographs of a young Prince Harry, of Diana's sister Lady Jane Fellows, of their father, Earl Spencer. They created side-by-side comparisons, the resemblance across generations becoming undeniable. In Archie's hair, they saw the living legacy of the Spencer spirit, a lineage often described as more fiery, emotional, and independent than the stoic Windsor line. This was not just about color. It was about character, a tangible link to a heritage of challenging the norm. The public's reaction was overwhelmingly warm, a collective awe that transcended the usual partisan divides between pro-Sussex and pro-Cambridge factions. There was something universally understandable about a child inheriting a beloved parent's most recognizable feature. For supporters of Harry and Meghan, it was a touching sign of the strong father-son bond, a piece of Harry that would walk into the future with Archie. For more traditional royal watchers, it was a comforting nod to continuity, a reminder that despite the upheavals, the bloodline, with all its distinctive traits, continued. The photograph did more than show a little boy's hair. It humanized the entire narrative. It pushed aside the toxic headlines, the complex debates about roles and responsibilities, and presented something pure and simple, a family trait passed on with love. The journey of that red hair, however, began long before Archie's birth. woven into the very fabric of his father's life. Prince Harry's own copper-tone curls were his defining physical characteristic from his first public appearance as a baby in his mother's arms. He grew up under the intense glare of the media, where his hair color was never just hair color. It was a punchline for late-night comedians, a label slapped upon him by tabloid headlines, and a source of relentless schoolyard teasing he would later candidly confess to dreading. The word ginger, in the British context, carried a weight, often used as a term of othering, and Harry bore the brunt of it. His brother, William, with his more classic Windsor fair hair and features, seemed to fit a more traditional mold. Harry, with his red hair and freckles, stood out, a visual echo of the Spencers that somehow made him seem both more approachable and more targetable. This trait inextricably linked him to his mother's family. Princess Diana, though blonde, came from a line where red hair was prevalent. Looking at portraits of the Spencer ancestors or photographs of Diana's own siblings, the genetic through line was clear. In the public imagination, the Spencer side was associated with passion, volatility, and a heart-led approach to life, qualities Diana embodied. The Windsor side, by contrast, was stereotyped as reserved, dutiful, and emotionally contained. Harry's hair, therefore, became an unwitting symbol of the internal conflict he might have felt. The tension between the formal duty of his paternal lineage and the empathetic, rebellious spirit of his maternal one. He was physically a bridge between two very different dynastic temperaments. As a young man in the army, Harry seemed to lean into his distinctive look, wearing it with a sense of pride that felt like a quiet reclamation. He was no longer the awkward boy being teased, but a soldier, a pilot, a man defined by his actions. The Royal Ginger moniker was softened, sometimes even used with affection by the public. It became part of his brand of relatable royalty. When he began his relationship with Meghan Markle, a woman of mixed-race heritage, the public discourse around genetics took on a new dimension. There was open curiosity about what their children might look like, a conversation that, while often uncomfortably fixated, underscored the fascination with royal lineage and its visible markers. Would the strong Spencer red hair make an appearance, or would other genes dominate? The birth of Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor in May 2019 was met with a global fever of anticipation. The first official photographs revealed a beautiful baby with a soft peach fuzz of hair that was difficult to define. The world scrutinized those images. Some thought they detected a hint of red in the fuzzy wisps under the certain light. Others saw light brown. The palace announcement did not specify hair color, and the Sussexes, increasingly protective of their privacy, offered no clues. As Archie grew and was seen on a few select occasions, his christening, the South Africa tour, his hair remained a neutral, light toddler shade. The ginger heir question remained unanswered, slowly fading into the background of the more dramatic narratives of Megxit, the move to North America, and the seismic Oprah interview. The trait that had so defined his father's public image seemed to have skipped a generation, or so it appeared. Life at Frogmore Cottage, and then in their new Montecito home, was deliberately shielded. The Sussexes were determined to give Archie, and later his sister Lilibet, a childhood of chosen moments, not constant exposure. The photos they released were curated. Archie's back to the camera on his first birthday, a shadowy glimpse of him holding his father's hand in a garden. The mystery of his appearance, and specifically whether he carried his father's famous hair, deepened. This secrecy, of course, only amplified the public's desire to know. It became one of the many unanswered questions that swirled around the family. Then, the cracks began to appear in the carefully maintained wall of privacy. It started not with an official photo, but with a paparazzi shot taken from a staggering distance on a walk. Then, another, slightly clearer, from a member of the public who happened to spot them. The quality was poor, but the hints were there, a warmth to his hair color that wasn't quite brown. The catalyst was the couple's Netflix documentary. Amidst the personal revelations and historical footage, There were flashes of home video, snippets of their private life. Archie appeared, more grown, his voice heard, his personality sparkling. And in certain frames, under the warm lights of their home or the bright Californian sun, his hair showed undeniable reddish tones. It was not the vibrant copper of Harry's youth yet, but a subtle strawberry blonde that was decidedly auburn-tinted. The audience noticed instantly. Social media buzzed with screenshots and clips. Did you see it? In that scene by the chicken coop, it's totally red. The evidence was moving from speculative to concrete. The photograph that truly settled the debate, the one described in the initial hook, was likely a product of this new, slightly more open era. Perhaps it was released by the couple themselves, a conscious decision to share a happy moment on their own terms. Or perhaps it was leaked from within their trusted circle. Its authenticity was never in doubt. The clarity was too good, the moment too natural. This was the confirmation. The reddish hair was no longer a hint or a trick of the light. It was his hair. The boy had inherited one of his father's most iconic and historically burdensome features. The narrative swiftly evolved from "does he have it?" to "look how much he has it." The side-by-side comparisons now were not with ancient Spencer ancestors, but with a specific beloved image. Prince Harry at a similar age, perhaps at a polo match or on the steps of a hospital, his own red curls shining. The resemblance was breathtaking, a mirror across decades. For Harry, this physical manifestation of his lineage in his son must have been deeply moving on a level beyond public perception. Here was a piece of his own identity, one that had caused him pain and later become a point of strength, now living on his child, born into a life he had radically reshaped to be safer and more loving. The trait that had once made him a target in the harsh British tabloid ecosystem was now thriving on his son, who was being raised an ocean away from that very culture. It was a full-circle moment of profound personal resonance. The inheritance was not just of hair color, but of a legacy reshaped, the Spencer fire and independence, now paired with the protective, compassionate values he and Meghan were fiercely instilling. The public and media digestion of this confirmed trait was multifaceted. The initial wave was one of simple, heartwarming recognition. It was a story people could understand and connect with, regardless of their stance on the royal rift. It sparked light-hearted memes, adorable edit videos set to music, and a flood of comments from parents sharing stories of their own children inheriting a distinctive family feature: a nose, a smile, a curl. It made the royal family, often seen as impossibly remote, feel relatable in a fundamental, human way. Geneticists and hobbyists even chimed in, explaining the science of recessive genes and how red hair can skip generations, adding a layer of intellectual fascination to the sentimental one. However, beneath the warmth, more complex reflections simmered. Commentators began to draw deeper parallels. They noted that Archie, like his father before him, was growing up as a spare, albeit in a completely different context and structure. He was inheriting not just the hair, but perhaps the psychological position of the second-born, the one who carved a unique path. More pointedly, they reflected on how this child, bearing the most traditionally British of royal traits, was being raised as a Californian with dual citizenship and within a family that had explicitly rejected the traditional royal roadmap. The red hair became an ironic symbol of the very heritage from which his parents had sought distance to protect him. It was a permanent, visible connection to an institution he might never officially serve, a birthright wearing a distinctly nonconformist hue. The conversation also turned, inevitably, to the past. People remembered the cruel headlines and jokes directed at Prince Harry for decades. There was a collective sense of protection projected onto Archie, a hope that he would be spared that particular cruelty. The world had, in many ways, evolved since the 80s and 90s. Discussions about bullying, body shaming, and kindness were more mainstream. The public sentiment seemed to be that this child should be celebrated for this inheritance, not mocked for it. It was a subtle indicator of how societal attitudes, and perhaps the monarchy's relationship with the press, had shifted, even if only slightly. For the wider royal family, the image of Archie's red hair served as a silent, poignant reminder of the branches of the family tree now living abroad. For King Charles III, seeing his grandson bear such a strong resemblance to his own son must have stirred complex emotions, pride, longing, and perhaps regret over the distance. For Prince William, it was a visual confirmation of his nephew's paternity, a bond of brotherhood made manifest in the next generation. The hair was a biological thread that still connected Archie to the House of Windsor, a fact no statement or title decision could ever change. In the serene landscape of Montecito, where the focus was on chicken coops, school runs, and beach days, the color of a little boy's hair was simply that, a feature, not a headline. For Archie, it would be a normal part of his self-image, just as his father's freckles or his mother's smile were to them. He would grow up knowing it came from his dad, a fun family fact, before he ever understood its public symbolism. The weight of the narrative was for the outside world to carry, not for him. His parents' mission was to ensure that his identity was built on a foundation of security, love, and purpose, far away from the defining scrutiny that had marked his father's youth. The story of Archie's hair, therefore, is more than a cute genetic quirk. It is a modern parable about inheritance, perception, and the reclaiming of narrative. It is about how a trait once used as a weapon of mockery against a prince became, a generation later, a symbol of endearing connection and resilient legacy for his son. It highlights the strange alchemy of royalty, where the most personal, biological details become public property, loaded with history and meaning. That flash of reddish gold in the California sun is a silent testament to the past, to Diana's lineage, to Harry's journey, and a bright, unscripted promise for the future. It proves that some ties, woven by nature itself, are unbreakable by distance or discord, continuing to grow, quietly and surely, with each new sunrise.